This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
Just use your imagination and, frighteningly, it may come true. This is Wretched Radio, Romans 1, a chapter in a book that reads us, that knows us, and it describes precisely what is going on in our culture, cultures past and cultures to come, a civilization that rejects the most obvious thing in the universe, that God exists. Their minds will become increasingly darkened. Thought experiment. Imagine something wacky, something that a generation before us, your generation, would have scoffed. Oh, that's ridiculous. There's no way that there will be gay marriage. Oh, wait a second. Sorry, that one's done. There's no way that transgenders will be esteemed and you'll be seen as a lout if you criticize. Okay,
Done
wait,
too.
Sorry. That one, check and double check. Let's dismantle the police. Such foolish thinking. Nobody would ever do that. Minneapolis just did that. Okay, what's next? How much goofier can it get? Imagine it. And Romans 1 says, because the persons that get together and say there is no God, the most obvious fact in the universe, their minds become increasingly darkened. You say, well, pedophilia. There is no way we'll slip that far down the slope. Oh, really? Headline from an obscure newspaper. I grant you, it's kind of a, nobody really reads this thing. It's called the nytimes.com, NY Times. Guys,
Nitimes.
what is it? This Ny Times.
Nitimes.
Nitimes.
New York.
So just some
It
obscure
is the
little
bastion
rag
of all
that's-
things newsy.
Yeah, pedophilia. It's a disorder, not a crime.
It was the bastion of all things newsy.
The misconception that pedophilia is the same as child molestation needs to be corrected. One can live with pedophilia and not act on it. Sites like Virtuous Pedophiles provide support for pedophiles who do not molest children and believe that sex with children is wrong. It's not that these individuals are inactive or non-practicing pedophiles, but rather pedophilia is a status and not an act. I don't even know what that means for sure. It sounds like the Revolve or the Resolve movement that's going on, where you can be a gay Christian. There's one for you. There's a movement that's saying, well, you can still be identified as gay and be a Christian. Now, you can live with another person of the same gender. Just, don't act on it, but you can, hang out in that culture to celebrate your gayness. Just don't act on it. So they say right now, this would have been esteemed as unimaginable a decade ago. But here we are. A second misconception is that pedophilia is a choice. So they try to come up with some research to say people are born that way. Therefore, well, we need to understand, and we need to maybe come up with a new way of dealing with pedophiles. Now, to their credit, in the New York Times article, they do imply that it's not a great thing if they act on it, but the point of it is we need to see it differently here. And I grant you, there can be kindness shown to people who struggle with this. But the framing of this, it's clear. We have seen this painting enough. We have watched this film play out before. First, it's a little of this, then it's a little bit more of that, and the next thing you know, we have to celebrate it or we're the bad guys. Well, that's just the New York Times. Okay. This is from The Express in the UK. Headline from a labor-linked NCCL. We can't prove sex with children does them harm. I'm sorry, what? Extracts from an NCCL report written for the Criminal Law Revision Committee in 1976, when Mrs. Hewitt was General Secretary. It says where both partners are age 10 or over but under 14, a consenting sexual act should not be an offense. As the age of consent is arbitrary, we propose an overlap of 2 years on either side of 14. So a 16-year-old and a 10-year-old, that's fine. Childhood sexual experiences willingly engaged in with an adult result in no identifiable damage. The Criminal Law Commission should be prepared to accept the evidence from follow-up research on child, quote, victims, which show there's little subsequent effect after a child has been molested. No, that couldn't possibly happen where it becomes legal to be behaving like that. Nope, no chance. And our government will stand down while miles of Minneapolis are burned to the ground. And now the police force is being dismantled. What's going on? Romans chapter 1, starting in verse 18. God can lift his hand of common grace when people increasingly reject what is most obvious, what he has made clear throughout creation, that he exists. Hold on. It continues. Because they knew God, they did not glorify him, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools. Isn't that funny? You're the fool now, Christian. They're wise. And their behavior is totally bonkers. You and I know it. The Bible tells us so. Historically, we understand it that way. But you are the out-of-date one. You are out of step. You are out of touch. And if you don't get with the program, oh, here's an article for you. Trans extremists blast small-minded bigots demand restoration of misleading rules. We'll get into that later, but you get the point. You're the bigot. You're the phobe. You're the hater. You speak out on anything that is not the popular social norm, the new construct. You're not tolerated anymore. You are the futile one. And that's exactly what Paul gets into here in Romans chapter 1. Their hearts became darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of God of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible men and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. So they keep some semblance. Well, we've got to give some sort of hat tip to a deity, so let's make it us. Paging PETA, anybody? Paging the people who increasingly say, we're sharing the planet with the animals, and we need to get in line with their needs, and we need to stay out of their territory. We can't possibly subdue it and make it better for human consumption. No, a three-legged turtle with a beak is living there, and we can't have them go extinct. So people, too bad for you. I don't know what a three-legged turtle with a beak is. My point is we got to protect the animals, and people, well, too bad. You're sharing their planet. That's worship. That's worship of the planet. That's worship of animals. And it's happening right in front of us. The environmentalism movement, you think this is too bizarre? One of the tenets of the environmental movement is we've got to keep it down on the number of kids because we're wrecking the environment. So you can maybe have one kid or no kids. No, that couldn't possibly happen. Turn on your news. We said that a week ago and a week before that. Christian, what I'm saying is we might want to get ready for a lot more of this. As bizarre as it, because it can drive you bonkers, doesn't it? You watch this behavior and you're just, what in the world? It's just all unraveling. And you ask the question, the psalmist pondered, what can the righteous do when the foundations crumble? What do you do? People are being bonkers. It's happened before. Consider the book of Judges. It happens whenever God is not worshipped. Hold on. It keeps going. Therefore, God gave them up to uncleanness in the lusts of their hearts to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forevermore. You know, the planet's speaking back to us with coronavirus. That's exactly what that is. That's what's being described there. For this reason, God gave them over to vile passions. Women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. Likewise, men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another. Men with men, committing what is shameful and receiving in themselves the penalty of the error which was due. Did we hear that message? No. You found some medicine so you could continue with the bad behavior because it's a suppression of the knowledge of what is obvious. Hold on. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do things which are not fitting. Do you think the world is debased yet? If you don't, just give it a few minutes. Being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents. Are we getting the point? Undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve those who practice them. That would be your government, turning wicked behavior into laws and penalizing those who speak out against them. Does your Bible know what it's talking about? Nails us to a T. Imagine it, Christian, and it could happen tomorrow unless God's hand of common grace intervenes. This is Wretched Radio.
Houston, I think we have a few problems here.
Go ahead, Wretched One.
Besides the fact I'm wearing a cardboard helmet, Houston, you have got one of the biggest false teachers in the universe. Are you kidding? He is so rich.
How rich is he, Wretched One?
I can see his house from here.